Serving the community and striving for justice is just part of who I am. I was raised on a farm, and so I know what hard work is like, and I'll bring those values I was raised with, and common sense, hard work, to the bench for the citizens of this township and this county. And if you have any questions, I have a website, johnsonforjudge.org, and you can get more about my background. If you have any questions, you can contact me through that. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other residents that would like to speak on some issue that's not on the agenda? Anyone else? I think it would be appropriate, since there's so many of you here for the boosters, that we move number 10, a special exception review for the Hudson boosters for the athletic complex off at 12.
I agree. Make it first on the agenda.
All right, evening, members of the board. I'm Dave O'Brien, President of Hudson Boosters. Ryan Carey is also a member of the Hudson Boosters on the board of directors. This evening, I'd like to go through the request for the Hudson Athletic Complex on the land we own on Highway 12. Quick agenda here. Going to cover quickly contributions the boosters have made to the community over the years. Quick review of the overall review of the plan. Look at a little more detail of the lighting plan, the spectator focus announcing plan, the results of our online petition that we initiated last week, and then closing statements. So the boosters have been in the community for over 7 years, and this is just a short list of some of the accomplishments we've made. If it looks like you read in the back of a pesticide bottle, we've had a lot of accomplishments over the years. Even thinning them down to maybe some of the more significant ones, it's still quite a lengthy list. But I'd like to take a look at is really the key takeaways here is the Hudson Boosters have been supporting the community needs for over 7 years. The Boosters are, in fact, the de facto Parks and Recs department for youth baseball, softball, and football for the community of Hudson. And by the community, that would be the City of Hudson, Town of Hudson, Village of North Hudson, Town of Troy, and the Town of St. John's. The services we provide are free of charge to the participating communities, but we do ask in return is that the communities support with the facilities that we need to run these youth sports programs. Over the years, more significantly in the baseball, softball, and football realm, over the years the Boosters have actually constructed 12 athletic fields that are used today. 3 fields at North Hudson Elementary, 4 at John Herrick Fields off of Crantley Avenue, 3 fields north of Grandview, which would be 2 used for football and 1 that is used for softball and baseball, until recently was used by the varsity softball team from high school. The south field at EP Rock, and most recently the T-ball field here at Town Hall. So the booster program looks like this on any given year. This is last year's programs. We support about 1,400 youth athletes throughout the year. In the spring, we're looking at having somewhere around 100+ teams for the 2025 season. So if we were to look at taking these teams and the amount of youth that we support, and we put it backwards as a numbers toward ratios on fields and communities, this is kind of what we're looking at. So the city of Hudson, we have about a ratio of 36 to 1. The town of Hudson, we're at 100 to 1. The village of North Hudson, which we would include the high school fields, or the school fields in this simply because we ended up building those 3 fields, 52 to 1. Town of Troy would be 46 to 1. St. Joe's would be 79 to 1. As we've been developing our approach, we were using a little bit more of a data-driven approach. It was only just a few short years ago where coaches were really collecting checks and registration forms at the first day of practice moving forward. But with everything moving to an online registration, it gives us a better understanding of where the athletes are coming from, and it gives us a little bit more information to work on. For example, even though the town of Hudson is about half the size of the city of Hudson, actually in the boosters' eyes, you're actually computers. So you have basically a third of our athletes coming out of the town of Hudson and a third coming out of the city of Hudson. So even though the population of the city is much larger, we're getting a proportionally larger ratio of athletes out of town than we would expect. So what's the best way to address some of these shortcomings? Since all of the programs, whether it's baseball, softball, football, other youth sports, are run by 501c3 organizations in the community, is really we need to go back to the towns and the cities that we support and look at what other options we have in the communities to increase the fields. So it was just about over a year ago, the town of Hudson came up and instituted the Town of Hudson 2040 Comprehensive Plan. All right, so that's really a path forward for goals and policies and how the community is looking at developing itself into the future. If you look at the top of page 14, under community goals and facilities, the number one goal is to maintain and provide community facilities and services that create a safe, attractive, and healthy environment that meets the needs of current and future town residents. So the plan that we're proposing really squarely addresses the shortcoming we have and addresses the number one goal in community facility needs. It also follows the policies set forth below in order to achieve those goals. So in 2011, we purchased 21 acres on Highway 12, and with the sole purpose to provide quality youth athletic fields for youth into the future. Using the data-driven approach, we just weren't going to pick what we think we might need or might need. What we ended up doing was we ended up hiring Dickerson Baker, national leader in fundraising solutions and campaigns, to conduct a feasibility study for the facility. The study was conducted over a 2-month period in 2024. In that, we interviewed over 30 philanthropic organizations and individuals. We also had an online survey of over 75 questions that went out to 4,300 community members who either have had or have youth participating in the sports throughout from the Hudson Boosters. The expected response rate on a 75-question online questionnaire was only 2%. We ended up in an 8% response rate, a 400% increase over the norm. Results of the study were positive and supportive in moving ahead with the youth sports complex. Following Dickerson Baker, we also engaged development partner of ISG. They're a leading design firm in engineering in the area of sports facilities and initial design concept to come up with basically what the property on Highway 12 could look like. In that, we're looking at doing a state-of-the-art complex to host all programs and skill levels. And what I mean by all programs and skill levels is that on any given night in the spring, we would look at having an in-house baseball, in-house softball, traveling baseball, all playing games up there simultaneously. So it's really is envisioned as a place that all athletes, regardless of their gender or skill level, would be able to play. This facility would have 5 lit turf athletic fields, electronic scoreboards for all fields, spectator-focused announcing system, so you can hear what's going on in your, specific to the field that you're on. The complex would have over 7.4 acres of athletic turf, full concessions and restroom facilities, playground area for families, central plaza for gathering, area for future indoor training facility. As I mentioned before, it follows the 2040 Town of Hudson Comprehensive Plan. The estimated product cost is over $14 million. If you base that on the 2025 population estimates of the Town of Hudson, we're looking at investing over $1,300 for every man, woman, and child in the Town of Hudson. A quick snapshot of what that might look like from a little high up. The access to the property is actually deeded access across the parcel to the north that was recorded when we purchased the property. And the access point for all the parcels on the east has already been set by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. So the access would go across the property to our north to the access point on Highway 12. I asked you, drew up some renderings of what the facility might look like. This is a bird's eye view. A plan view with all parking on site. See in the lower right corner would be, and this isn't necessarily the way it's going to look out, this is just a concept drawing of how things might fit together. Lower right would be additional training, indoor training area, an outside training area to the left of that, playground, spacious plaza and gathering area. The plaza view would have overhead cover, full facilities. What this next picture is supposed to represent is we envision that every single team that the boosters support could play a game up there. They may not necessarily play all their games, but they'll play some. So for example, the large field would accommodate 2 youth football fields. So youth football fields are a little bit shorter, a little bit narrower than a full-size field. We could put 2 of those on that larger field. The technology these days with turf is those markings can be put on in the fall and come off in the spring, so that when you're playing baseball or softball out there, it would look like a baseball or softball field. And in the fall, convert it over to youth football. Rendering from the spectator point of view with what the field might look like in play. So this rendering isn't all creative. It came from a picture that I took here, and when the Challenger League was playing at the First National Bank Stadium in River Falls. So while we really appreciate the partnership we've created with River Falls, it would be great if we could actually have an experience like this in our community for our teams. As we're looking at developing a plan, we know that lights and sound are a big issue. Many of us have traveled around and seen a lot of facilities throughout the country that have really come a long ways. The technology nowadays with lights and sound is far beyond what we have in our community currently. Okay, the renderings look like what you'd normally see, a bunch of lights on the top of a pole and a glaring eyesore. When we went forward with ISG, we wanted to come up with a little bit better design criteria. So we want to minimize the glare and impact of the surrounding properties, minimize the glare impact on players as well as spectators. Meanwhile, we want to make sure that we maintain the average foot candles of 50-foot candles for infield and 30-foot candles for outfield illumination. We also asked that the design complex be designed to meet dark sky outdoor sports lighting program standards. In order to do this, the boosters have partnered with Musco Lighting as a leader in sports facility lighting to design a community-friendly stadium and lighting plan. This is one of the additional slides I did add because at the Planning Council there was a few more questions on dark sky and as well as foot candles and candelas. So what I'd like to do is ask Greg Schmidt from Musco to speak to the dark sky program a little more intelligently than I could, as well as candles and candelas.
Yeah, my name is Greg Smith with Musco Lighting, and I was here at the Planning Commission meeting. And one of the things that was evident, I was also have been involved with some stuff in, locally going back several years. One of the things that was evident is right off the bat that we wanted to adhere to the dark sky outdoor lighting standards, which was not possible with any type of HID technology. And it's not possible really with a lot of LED technology. But when we transitioned to LED over the last 6, 8, 10 years, one of the big focal points was how do we become a good neighbor? We deal with a lot of projects in heavily densely populated areas, also a lot of dark sky areas, whether you're talking Arizona or across the country. So one of the keys to this project was to be able to design the project from the get-go to adhere to the dark sky outdoor sports lighting program. What it really focuses on is not so much about spill light, which that's not an issue, it's about the glare. And that's what most people have a perception of. If you go down to Grandview in the city of Hudson versus say what we've done, which is an old Musco project from 35 years ago, or if you go to the high school and see the football field, the tennis courts, there's a huge difference. And so what it focuses on is candela, which is what measures glare. And we're able to design this project to adhere to that program, which not only enhances playability, but also provides less of a, minimizes any issues for the neighbors. So the neighborhood properties on this particular project in our world are relatively far away. I have projects in Milwaukee, for example, where literally it butts right up to somebody's driveway. So doing what we can to alleviate the problems, I think the perceptions that a lot of people have and have had, and rightfully so over the years, of seeing the fixtures, seeing the glare, and as you'll see in some photos coming up, that has been minimized. But it does meet this facility, the way it's laid out, meets the criteria set forth by Dark Skies International and their Outdoor Sports Lighting Program. And I have several of them in the state. Got 3 facilities in Waukesha. Actually, 2 Eau Claire High School football fields are dark sky compliant, and one of the main reasons for that was, especially at Eau Claire North, they put a new football facility in. They never had lights in that neighborhood or anything like that before. And so that was also an issue. And so we're able to take those facilities, be dark sky compliant, and the lights really become a non-issue because of the technology that we have and so forth. So there again, there's multiple facilities that have that, or just the LED product that we offer in general is a huge improvement over the perception that some of the projects in the past. So it's definitely a leap forward in technology.
All right, thanks, Greg. So to meet these dark sky standards, too, this isn't something you just ask for afterwards. It's part of the integrated building of the project. You have to send the plans to dark sky before as part of the planning process. So not only does it have to go through your city, local, county planning, it has to go to dark sky to get signed off on, who has stricter standards than anything we have currently here in the town. So it's not just this level, it's got to go through their level too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just add to that. Once this is installed in, they come, that's not us, they're a third-party, independent, nonprofit entity. They come out and actually verify it. So it's got to meet not only what it meets on paper and design, they actually physically, once it's installed and operational, they come out and use a candela meter to actually take the readings to make sure that it's compliant.
All right, in order to get to that level of light control, just the evolution of light control from the early 70s through today, up until the current technology of LED, really was a matter of changing the parabolic reflector and putting lens covers on the light bulbs, the lights. It wasn't until they got to true LEDs that allowed them to maintain that level of light control. So our typical light standard, you would be looking at something, the lights on the left there, where they're gradually getting better and better and better. until you get to the second one from the right, which is the TLC, which is Total Light Control for Musco. And that's the type of product that we're looking at installing. Now, not all LEDs are created equal, so the one on the very far right is a current LED from another company. So you'll notice how we're not saying that it's lowest bidder, we're looking for the Musco TLC LED, so we can get the least number of candelas, which is the glare that we're looking at. So I got a few more pictures coming up here, and this is really just to get your mind around like what can be possible. And what these are some retrofits. So these aren't dark sky facilities. It's a facility that was created, that was originally designed and built with the old technology, and they converted them over to the newer technology. So on the left here, that's normally what you're looking at seeing for a ball field complex. And on the right, after they installed the new TLC LEDs, that's what it looks like. Another example here is a football stadium here. So you're looking right into the lighting from across the field here. So those light standards are typically what you'd expect to see. So the two things I'd like to point out here is obviously number one, the reduced glare from the new LEDs on the right. And secondly, look at the playing field. Look how much more, these two systems were designed to the same standards using 75 luxes. And the performance with the TLC LEDs on the right is far superior. It's almost like it has twice as much light as the other. So this is actually a dark sky compliant field. It's Waunakee, Wisconsin. It's northwest of Madison. And on the left there, what you see is part of the planning process. When they start doing these photometrics, when you're designing these fields, obviously you can see how quickly the light falls off on the edge of that field. What I'd like to point out here is that on certain areas, and we think of yellow, green is kind of like areas that you can see or measure, but if you really look at it, even though the device can measure candelas, it's really hard for the visual eye to pick it up. So the reality is, the green, the yellow, and the light orange aren't really visible in the picture. It's not until you get to the dark orange, the red, and the dark maroon that you actually start seeing light on the ground. We'll come back to that in a moment. In designing, what Musco did was took our initial plan that we had there, the concept, and they put about 35 or 40 pages worth of detailed analytics into it. We talked about candelas, but there's also the candles, foot candles, which is spillover, that you don't want to have on your neighbor's property. So in residential and ag residential, there are no standards for light spillover in this community. Not until you've looked at the building codes, until you get into commercial, industrial, or industrial, are there light standards that you have to mitigate light spill. And in this town, it's 0.4 candles for neighboring property. Now it's hard to read, but what the numbers show on the edges there is this spillover is 0.0. So none of the spillover for property. So it's designed better than any current standard in the current town. So we took the photometrics and we took the field and laid it over on our current parcel of property there. We initially designed it with the concept of putting the parking lot on the east side because we're thinking, well, the lights from the ball field will actually cast further glare than we had anticipated. But after we looked at everything, we thought, well, and we took some feedback from the first neighborhood meeting that we had, if we put the parking lot on the street side, or the Highway 12 side, what it might look like. So if you think back to that other picture, anything that's green, yellow, or light orange is really, you really can't pick it up as far as individual lights, not until you get to the darker orange. One of the other comments that we had was they're worried about the light glare for cars going up and down Highway 12. But the only real way for this facility to be the dominant source of light glare is to have cars drive up and down Highway 12 with their headlights on. So the cars are going to have far more glare than this facility would ever would. In further developing some products, they did some light renderings, some computer renderings of what the lights might look like. But it's always a good idea to get a picture of what it might look like in real life. So this is from the spectator and the player point of view looking into the light source at night at the field. So you're not seeing any large glaring light standards out there. It's really controlled light that's focused to the playing field. This is Wanakee as well, and it's a good picture to show because we have the current technology of that field we just looked at in the foreground, and behind it, the soccer complex has some slightly older 2007 technology. So what I have circled in red is the old 2007 lighting standard technology, versus look at the tops what I have circled in yellow. You can't even see hardly any glare there at all. Same field from a slightly higher point of view, you can just see how fast and how rapidly that light source drops off on all sides. So one question might be, well, what if your house is next to one of these? Well, this is a picture in Mount Washington, Kentucky, and this one happens to have a house right in back of the field. And really the most prominent glare source in this entire picture is the open garage door. Not a source of light from the playing field. So we mentioned earlier the 2040 comprehensive plan for the town of Hudson. Right along on the website, along with the comprehensive town, is also what might be used for the future land use map for the town of Hudson. Currently, if you look on the left, we are actually zoned ag residential. And on the right is what the town of Hudson views as potential use for those other properties. So if we don't build this there, and then what might go up if we don't put a ball field there? Well, in all reality, it would probably end up being it'll probably become a commercial property of some sort. So the question is, what type of commercial properties would be allowed there? Retail, things like that. So what we're proposing is, what we're looking at doing is, what you see on the left there would be a sports complex on the left. Or the other possibility might be if it goes commercial, that is a picture of the Lowe's in West St. Paul, who has similar lighting standards and development standards as the town of Hudson. And so we have a Home Depot and a Menards in town, but we don't have a Lowe's yet. So that would be a possible candidate to develop on that piece of property if we don't put a ball field sports complex on it. So then what's important to look at, if we look at these photometrics, is what you see there on the left with all those colors, the green and yellow, that really equals that field that you see on the right. That level of light control, that level of containment. So moving on to the spectator-focused announcing plan, we would use the same type of approach and principles that we use in controlling the lights. So we would come up with some sound standards that we're looking at is having sound focused on the fields from spectators from first base to home plate to third base. We want to minimize the sound bleed over to adjacent fields, minimize the sound impact on neighboring properties. Have the developer utilize industry standard EASE, which is electroacoustic simulators for engineers, which is basically, they would create something like that map we just saw with the green, yellow, red for sound. Okay. And actually what we're looking at doing is, in the town ordinance, there's actually an entire chapter, 64, for noise control. That's already in the ordinances, okay? We're not asking to change anything in Chapter 64. We're just asking to be able to follow what's already in Chapter 64 of the zoning of those ordinances. So at this point, every man, woman, and child, for-profit corporation, non-profit, with the exception of youth sports and high school and school district, can have an amplified sound system. So all they have to do is follow and comply with Chapter 64 of the next one. That's all we're asking to do. So although we haven't created the photometrics yet, if you look at those three yellow triangles, that's what we would expect the sound to cover. Each field would have, I only did one field there, but each field would be basically be very similar to that. We're not looking at a large broadcasting system. The first company we were starting to work with, they didn't have anything, quite honestly, small enough for what we're looking at doing. Their products cover the entire field, and we're not looking at doing that. We're looking at covering just the area from first to home to third at each of the fields. So in addition to working with Dickerson Baker and ISG for development, and along with Musco, we also initiated some neighborhood meetings. That's an online petition to get feedback from the community. So we had neighborhood meetings and online petition. The neighborhood meetings, we had 2 neighborhood meetings, one on November 18th and one on January 2nd. We invited 18 neighbors to each meeting. The first meeting, we had 4 attended in person and 1 sent a representative. And the second meeting, July 2nd, we had 3 attendees and 1 was a repeat from the first meeting. On January 3rd, we sent out an online petition to over 4,100 recipients. Again, using the metrics, we were expected an open rate of about 34%, and we actually had 56% open the survey. I was expecting a 5.4% click rate, and actually had 14.3. And we would expect, based on our registrations, that approximately 1/3 of the respondents would be from the town of Hudson. It actually ended up being over 43% from the town of Hudson. As of this morning, when I put this together, we had 523 responses, 227 from town residents. We had 99.2% in favor, and 118 people had additional comments. Since this time, we've had over another 90 fill out the survey. So at this point, the survey is actually going peer-to-peer and on social media, which is where people are picking up the link to the survey. 118 comments, a little bit difficult to read. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but I will go through a few slides, and I'll just read the ones that are going to be highlighted in yellow. I'll leave it up there for a few moments so everybody can read the rest of them. As a former Hudson, no, this is all raw data, by the way. Spelling, grammar error, all included. Right? This is just cut and paste. Here you go. So, as a former Hudson Booster athlete, this is sorely needed and decades overdue. Emily plays for the Challenger Baseball League. It would be nice to be able to play in a complex like that without having to walk the distance to those more difficult ball fields at the park. Some of the kids in the program have more problems getting around than others. Hudson needs more areas for our kids to play. Hudson needs this. Our family fully supports. It's about time something like this in Hudson, from a lifelong, multi-generation Hudson resident. It's way overdue. Love the idea, long overdue. This is a must for our community. We need a facility like this in our community. If we want it to be first-rate community for for families, we need to have first-rate facilities for kids to participate in sports. Facility we have envisioned would at best support about 40% of our current athletes at our current levels. We had 2 questions that do come up on a continual basis. Do you have any pictures of what it might look like in real life, not just renderings? And the other one was, what would it take to put all of our athletes, have all of our athletes play games at a facility like this? So I do have one picture that kind of fits those bills. It's from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. This is a Sanford Sports Complex. By pure coincidence, there's an H on the field. By pure coincidence, it's blue. Now, we're not looking to go to doing 10 fields, but if you look at the 5 in the foreground, that would be very, very close to what we'd be looking at, because it was designed by ISG. So if you really look at the renderings that they had created and some of those actual pictures in the middle, that is really, really close to what that would look like in real life. And if you want all the kids, all the athletes to play on these fields, we need a double. That's what the picture would look like. So this is the vision boosters have for youth sports in this community. So to clarify what we're looking for, I'd like to turn over to Ryan at this point.
Thanks, Dave. I'll be brief. So, as you likely know, your ordinance is specifically 105-10 allows our organization to come to you and request a special exception permit to develop a sports complex. However, that same section prohibits lighting, amplified sound, and also requires that all activity be done during daylight hours. And that simply will not work for what we need for this community, what we need for our youth. So what we're asking for you to do here today, the Hudson Boosters are requesting that the town board approve an amendment to the ordinance, specifically 105-10, to remove the lighting, amplified sound, and daylight hours restrictions to allow our organization to come back to you and apply for that special exception permit. As you know, step 1 of this process already occurred with the Planning Commission when they recommended approval of that. And we view step 2 being here for you this evening. And to be very clear, we understand we have several more steps to undertake to get to the finish line. But if we have that opportunity, we need, and we are asking you to approve a draft amendment to that ordinance. And again, removing the lighting, amplified sound, and daylight hour restrictions. And presumably, if you would do so, and work with your council to put something together, that would come back before you for approval, or presumably public comment. And that's what we're asking of you this evening. Before we take your questions, the one other thing I want to point out is that there's a vocal minority that seems to be opposed to this. And some of the things we're hearing are that, well, if the town amends this ordinance and removes these restrictions, that means anybody that's in a similar situation gets to have a complex with light, sound, and operate beyond daylight hours. That's not true. Remember, you still have the final say with that special exception permit. So again, we're asking for the chance to come before you and present that permit and get our project approved. Thank you for your time.
In order to really discuss this, I'll reiterate what Brian Work did with the Planning Commission, and that is the special exception really wouldn't apply for them because it wouldn't meet the ruling that it's a hardship, and it's not. So that would be turned down by a special exception to allow the lighting. So the only option to consider, and that's why they recommended moving forward, is that we consider moving forward with a change, just as Mr. Carey indicated that we should move forward with changes in our, and I was around on the board with all of those when they occurred in 2011, when that change was put in 2018, And the technology that was available at both times was the technology that we were saying we didn't want. I look at this and there is a significant technology change, and it's good for the community that we move forward in this direction, I believe. But we need to do something as a board to move forward to do that. So is there anybody on the board that's willing to make a motion?
Well, can I just
Let's make a
say,
motion and discuss it.
Yes, we should make a
Discuss.
motion and discuss it.
I want to make a motion to, on that, I don't have to make one.
Okay, is there a second?
what was the motion?
To amend 1.105.
105-10 ordinance.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have to decide how the lighting changes and the sound in there that we want as we move forward is what we're gonna decide. And then, just to help you understand, and the audience, what has to happen is what Mr. Carey said is correct. We gotta come back forward, we bring the new language out, we will have a public hearing, it has to be adopted to even move forward. After the board approves it, it still isn't done. It has to go to the county. As I indicated to the boosters as they started to look at this, we're probably 6 months away from even being able to consider this being approved. It's not a slam dunk. It's not by any stretch of the imagination, okay?
I think this, first of all, would be great for the community. I'm all for this, but does anybody else feel like we should have maybe a working session to?
Oh, yeah,
On the
absolutely.
changes?
We ain't approving nothing tonight.
Oh, that's what.
That's, I just need a discussion. I need a second.
There's a, go ahead.
I need a second.
We need a second, yeah, for a second.
I need a second to Ken's motion so we can discuss it.
Tonight or at a working session?
Tonight.
Then
We
we'll
don't have to
meetings.
take action.
Then we'll have meetings.
I'll second.
You're willing to second. Motion by Ken, seconded by Rachel. Any further discussion? Now
Yes,
we can
I want
discuss.
to, I want to make sure that, noted, that we have to be careful about this because this opens up for the soccer fields then as well, the wording. We can't just isolate,
I know.
we can't just isolate one area, so now we have to be in consideration for the soccer fields as well. So I don't want to walk into that trap.
And the baseball field's right behind us.
Well, I just don't want to, we,
And so your language ought to indicate that you want to use dark sky lighting and make sure that your language is in such, and after the planning commission, I wanted to know if we use that language, are we limiting it to a one lighting supplier? And the answer was no. So we can use that technology description in our writing to protect all of our residents that live near all of these
I have a
fields.
question for Dave about that. Dave's, the Hudson High School dark sky group?
They're not, so I would probably prefer that to Greg. So-
No, they're not, but I mean, it's
And
just,
that's an
that's
oversight
our
technology.
standard
And when
technology.
you're sitting at football games, you can't even see the homes behind, and that's.
The last picture I put up there from Sioux Falls, that's not dark sky either. That's off the shelf. They didn't need to go through it because there's buffalo out back or something. There wasn't a problem there. So, but to get dark sky certified is I mean, it's just another feather in your cap, and to make sure that you are minimizing the impact on all the neighbors. So, it costs funds to do that, but I think it's worthwhile to do that because we live in the community too.
Tim, what about litigation? The town is.
They're gonna have to prove that there's an issue with the dark sky once we create language that indicate, and Dave's got a valid point, and as we get into discussion, we'll have to discuss that, but I don't believe you've got as much concern with litigation as you had prior to that when the old technology. It did spill, it did. And that's why the board in 2018 changed the ordinance to take out, like even, just so the audience knows, in 2011, when that came in, the board approved lighting and sound on one field. That drove to the litigation in 2008, and then the zoning change in 2018 that said we're not going to allow it on any youth program. Now what I'm telling you is I believe we've got the technology change that for the community is a good idea. We just have to make sure that we find the right language to make sure that we protect the community and everybody that lives around these facilities.
And that goes for the sound systems.
Yep.
And how late do these games
We'll
go?
discuss.
So we're looking at mirroring the same hours that Grandview works. They go from, I believe, 6 to 10:30 for their part. So if we're trying to run the events, so you know, we don't know where all the community members play, right? Because a lot of kids from the town of Hudson play at Grandview. They're not open till 10:30 every night. But on the evening that you had a rain delay, delay because of lightning, you know, and you end up with a doubleheader game, you want to be able to try to finish those. Now, for the most part, we're planning to have two like for practices, you know, we're done by between 9 and 10 because kids have school. So we're really looking at just mirroring, like if you think of the community, Grandview is a resource for the Hudson community. No question about it. Kids from the town of Hudson play there all the time. So if we mirror the same hours that they have, same type of facility, I think that's probably, to me, would be fair.
So my question would be, even if the amplified sound systems met the noise requirements, what about the cheering in the crowd?
That's addressed in I think it's, section 64, or chapter 64.
And you think the requirement, it would be under the requirement? It would meet the requirements?
Yes, I
They're
mean,
gonna have to.
We're not talking about that though.
Yeah, that's
So,
not.
I mean,
what we're talking
Well,
about
it's
right now.
something to
If it's
consider.
after 10:30.
But that you would discuss at your working session, this is 105 to 10. is what
Well, I'm
we're
asking
talking about.
him because nobody here is gonna.
Okay, well, I do have a question for you, if I may.
sure.
So this all started way back in 2011. So until, how much money have you, okay, I guess getting to this, there's been time to raise money from way back until now. I am curious as to what's been done to raise money now and what's to say that we go through this, that you will follow through, and the exact type lighting that you're showing us, you know, that there will be no deviation because you couldn't raise the funds for this specific type of lighting.
I'd like to answer that to start with. If our ordinance says they gotta have dark sky lighting, they have to have it. They don't get approval for it.
It's gonna come back, it's gonna come back for us.
Yes,
We
that's
have to ultimately.
Yeah, so part of the planning, like Ryan said, it all comes, you're the gatekeeper. Right now, we can't even apply for it because it's against, it doesn't demonstrate a hardship. So, like for the sound, we just want to be able to follow section 60 or chapter 64. Just give us a chance to follow it. It's already there. It's an entire zoning is a chapter. Sound ordinance is an entire chapter, just like zoning. So I would probably go to chapter 64 instead of what's written there first before you add it.
And to let everybody know that's in the audience, where chapter 64 came from was back in the 1990s when we had a lot of residents bitching about the Rod and Gun Club. That's where chapter 64 came from. And that's the only reason that it happened. Okay?
I think another item that we have to reflect on is that one of the other items in here is there were no significant opposition from the surrounding property owners. And you've done some good work, already in terms of, your surveys and stuff, but, I think the people who are likely to answer those things are people who are in the know, in terms of being your constituency already. And I think I would like to see, some work done in terms of, better communication, with those surrounding neighbors.
It's been all over Facebook.
Okay, but
Everybody knows about
It's
it.
a fair point. And we have had the 2 meetings, and we directly invited the people most affected by this, and they've been invited to come. We'll hold 5 more meetings with those folks if we need to, certainly. And I think it's a very valid point.
Yeah.
And I also,
I mean, if you could even, stop by at the door and say, hey, you haven't been to one of our meetings, you know, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Are you, you know, are you okay with it? And, you know, if you can get a statement, you know, from them, that'd be great, but.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that everybody wants it to remain farmlands. So, but I think also the reality was, they realized something's gonna happen there, and I guess, you know, overall, they appreciated the candor, transparency, and the effort we're going through to try to minimize the lights. And we'd be happy to hold more, you know, we could go door to door. We had, you know, just trying to figure out how many more open houses or neighborhood meetings do we need to have for folks to, you know, opportunity.
And what we might request, Dan, at the time, after we've gone through all the ordinance change, as it's come in for the proposal, ask for a little bit tighter.
Yeah, we just want to make sure there's no surprises.
And I agree.
Our single biggest resident boundary is a previous softball commission. So he's on board.
I think it's an amazing concept. Your presentation was amazing. I think the technology's there. I've seen it. I work in my work. I work with the fields, and I've seen the lighting. And I think it's a great concept. I think it'd be dumb to let this go.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying. And can you want to do a roll call?
Can you go back to the resolution?
Just to look at changing the zoning.
We talked about amending
Just go in the new passion. We'll go in the working sections.
So it's consistent with the plan commissions to explore.
Yes.
I think that there really was
Exploring
language and amendments. So we're really exploring, but you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll come out at a certain point or anything like that. Nothing's agreed. So.
Okay? All those, do you want to have a roll call?
Section 105.
Are you ready?
Yes, this
Let's
is not
just
to
do
do
a
with the
roll call.
zoning, it's going to be according to the zoning.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Did anybody actually make a motion?
Karen did, you seconded.
Oh, I thought that was just to discuss it.
No, it is, but the motion is to look at where to change that.
Look into it further.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to the start of the agenda then. Consent agenda items, is there anything on the agenda that the board would like to pull off and discuss before we
Hang on. Anybody that was here for the public hearing, please sign in on that sheet before you leave, and with your name and address. That would be very, very helpful for us. Good, she put it on the next script. Well,
I'll go back to my
Yes, rezoning for public road aid, yes. Yes.
well,
But they still have to. They have to sign.
yeah, they signed in. Teresa said have everybody sign in. That's why I was telling you what she said. For the public hearing, correct. Everybody understand here. You guys, keep it down. We need to continue with the meeting, please.
motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Dan, second by Rachel. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carried. Committee reports. Friday night, wishing was moved library.
Yes, we should, it's gone.
And WTA and EMS is updated too. And we will be one in January, WTA. So there's nothing on this. Chairman's report, we've had a lot of problems on Kenny Road with the heavy construction with the bridges. And so we're getting a contractor to fix those. I've had several complaints, I noticed it myself in the last couple of weeks, potholes are showing up, and I don't know why. Because we haven't had hardly any moisture at all, and it's cold, that shouldn't cause potholes. But I'll talk to you tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. That's it on that. We've already done public comments. The public hearing is now on the rezoning of 487 and 491 on county land. Is there somebody that's going to speak to that on 487 and 491?
Yeah, Doug Lutz. Yep. What, so we're looking at just fixing something that's been there for over 4 years. And we're just trying to clean up a mess that somebody created 40 some years ago. And, you know, nothing's going to change on the property. We just want the property line to match, or the zoning to match the property line. So that's why we're looking for a lot line adjustment and a rezoning of the property.
Just for everybody's understanding, the reason it's got such a funny shape is that was originally in the 1800s, where the railroad went around the corner as it went north. And they used to have a steam engine sit out there because railroads didn't have brakes on them. So they had to hook up an engine going down the hill to keep them from going down the hill rapidly. And then they had to have one push it back up the hill from the other end. So they always had a locomotive out there at that switch. And that's why it's got that funny new shape and the lot lines. So it's been there for decades. You know what I mean? So, you know, I agree. It's been that way forever. I often wondered about that myself and understand why. It just because they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, that's.
And all the previous owners didn't either.
Yeah, I just bought it, the last guy that bought it, and then just, he actually straightened out one of the lines a little bit with the south side of it.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Does anybody have any comments that they'd like to make about this zoning change, rezoning of 487 and 491? Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to make a comment about that? The rezoning of 487 and 491? I'm going to ask one more time. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment about that? Thank you. I'd like to have a motion to move that we close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Ken made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Ken, second by Susan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Discuss on the rezoning of lots, the lot line adjustment on 487 and 491.
Are we running into changing the residential then to a 1 acre lot?
No. You're doing special dispensation, of which the attorney said we have the right to do as a town board.
That's one of my
And you're
concerns.
not changing the zoning, you're allowing a special, for a situation that's occurred for decades, the board is allowed to make a special dispensation, and the attorney says we can do it for this specific circumstance because of the conditions that have been there for ages.
So right now it's residential.
Yes.
What's there now?
Well, what it is right now is, it's industrial, and the house is on it. And so what you're trying to do is spin the house off, make it residential, and leave, right now the way it was split, the parking lot for the industrial, their business, is on the residential lot. So what they're trying to do is carve the parking lot out and make it part of the business lot and leave the residential house, which gets it down to about an acre.
Does it meets all the minimum easement requirements and everything?
Yes.
Okay.
So is this the current configuration and we're going to the flag configuration?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, so, which was the recommendation? Each lot is at least 2 acres?
No,
No.
no. And that's why you have to do special dispensation. Yeah. you're not meeting the code by allowing this to happen. But the board has the authority to do special dispensation on lot line.
We're not fulfilling the 2.5 including buildings and so forth, but we are, but that lot is supposed to be almost 2 acres.
The lot next to me is 1 acre again.
No, I'm just.
So I'm just telling you, so we got other ones in the town that are 1 acre.
I know.
But it's, so what you're doing is you're just saying, to try to straighten this situation out.
You
You have-
how big is the lot, right, after that? I think it was showed to me that it's.
Well, it's right here. It started out to be four, but first, it was like 1.2 acres for the house on the lot line. Now it's going to be down to 1 acre. So they're adding this to, from the way I read it, they're adding this to the other parcel.
That's my question, because it's not clear from the diagram. It looks to me like we've got more of it going into the residential.
Under the old one did. So what you're doing is you're changing, is going more toward the business side. You look at the bottom one, that's what it's going to. The top one is the way it was laid out. So if you look at the yellow line, all the parking is basically part of the residential lot, which is really what's happening. I don't know why that was drawn that way. I suppose they were trying to maintain something, I don't know. Got approval somehow. I don't think it was in that was done.
Yeah, this one confused me.
Why, this has been on the records for 6-8 months, hasn't it, that you've been working?
Yeah, I think it's been 8 months almost.
And the reason for that is, it's confusing.
Yeah.
And so even when it got through the planning commission, it was like, can we really give special disposition? You need to have the attorney tell us that we can do that. So they recommended that the attorney look at it to determine if we could do that. And the attorney came back and said, yes, in this particular circumstance, it justifies it. And that's the only reason that you're doing that.
So Tim, I guess to your point, what got confusing to me as well at one point was it's in the pencil drawing, it shows the lot 1 will be the commercial, and the lot 2 will be the residential, but then they got this scribbled in there, lot 3. What's that? That must have been the original?
That must have been.
Maybe that's
This
the
only
original
says
lot 3,
2.
okay.
Oh,
That's
that
why-
probably is true.
Why that was written in there, and it's like, okay, we're still talking about the same 2 lots.
Yes.
So if we cut off this residential spot, what does that do to us in terms of stormwater management and that sort of thing?
That's the next part.
Okay. We're going with that, because if we don't leave enough room,
On his site plan, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna do, and then we'll go back to it. We're gonna need to see a septic plan approval and a stormwater maintenance agreement before we'll be moving forward with this building. And then we know where we can build it as a residence. So we'll point all of that out as we do site plan, which is different than approving
Of the zoning. It's separate from
the
the zoning.
rezoning. Yes. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay? Yes. All right. Is there a motion to approve the rezoning for these 2 lots? I will make a motion that we move forward with approving the rezoning for lots 487 and 491 with the special dispensation for the lot line adjustment as recommended by the town attorney that the town board would give the authority to do that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like say aye. You opposed? Aye. Oh, you said.
I was late.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. So it's 5-0. page, okay. That's the rezoning. Discussion on site plan approval for 487 on County Road 8. That's the next one. That was postponed. I think the town board should have a similar recommendation that you go back, get septic approval for the house and this and the building, and that you do a stormwater maintenance agreement, and we would recommend there be no living in the building that you're running your business on. And the fire inspector shows, has pictures, and it looks like somebody's living in there. So what we want you to do is come back to the planning commission with your septic approvals, your stormwater maintenance agreement, and let's make sure we know that nobody's living in the facility that's a commercial operation. Okay?
Okay.
Do we get a motion to that effect?
I do have a question, it actually goes back to, so they talked about landscaping, parking, and I think they said that it was submitted in 2019, but there was nothing current. Lighting, trash enclosure, signs, and stormwater management, I think were the things they listed. Yeah, that was in the 2019 motion for approval. So he should go back and redo all of that,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So bring in a complete site plan approval, showing your lighting and everything, and parking and everything. Because Eric talks about he doesn't, not sure what you're doing with that. So you'll resubmit your plan again to Eric with all of that stuff and the septic approval and stormwater maintenance.
Can I hit
Go back to
I thought I seen something where you did have a drawing for possible signage. Yes.
But you're not going to approve the site plan tonight. You're going to recommend I go back, complete it.
No, but I just
and
want to
then
make
come
sure that you
back
have
to
all
the
this
town
on
board.
there.
Go back to the planning commission, and then the town. Is there a motion to send them back to complete it? And
So, second.
motion by Dan, seconded by Rachel. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. 5-0. The number 10 we already handled, 11 is discussion action on the power agreement. That is to allocate the amount of $119,578.98 to be held in a dedicated bank account to be used for improvement to the parking lot and/or playground in the future. Sounds like a great idea.
And that all came from our lease, so our lease agreement?
Actually, it was $120,000 minus their last month's rent.
Remember we made that agreement with the tower guy?
Yeah, oh, I.
They've come back and said, we're gonna give you $120,000 to buy out, which we finally have said, that looks like a good deal, but you're not just gonna spend it for roads, it has to be used for parking lot or playground in the future, not just falling into the general budget.
Maybe we can get rid of the sand out there so people can.
Yeah,
actually know,
and
you know,
some of that
what
equipment,
their shoes will
it's stainless steel, but if you start to look at it, it's really worn, and it was put in the 90s, it really does need replacement.
Represented that?
Yeah, your water fountains.
Yeah, she can't just buy.
Well, the reason we never did anything with the water fountains is because the water was still contaminated.
Tim, there was a girl here a couple meetings ago that had
That's
that,
summer.
that represented that type of equipment.
If you now have the money to do that,
Right.
we didn't have
That's
the
what I'm
money to do that before, you know what I mean?
I actually think I may know an actuary that might want to purchase that equipment that's out there now.
Okay, but let's go back to,
Let's go back. So
we had the motion to agree to it in a second.
I'll make a motion. Okay, somebody second it.
I'll say.
Rachel second.
Okay.
We're
So-
still discussing it anymore?
Yeah, I have a discussion question. So if we put this in a dedicated, restricted bank account, we still get the same interest we get on the...
It's not that type of account, we're just gonna switch the and name it whatever we decide to name this. We'll come up with a name.
What do we get for it?
We're at 5,
Okay, so we can.
little over 5, yeah, it's the same as all our other accounts
That's good.
at
That's
the
all.
moment. Yes. 5.0, it varies, you know.
Could possibly some of this money be used to replace some of the trees?
Nope.
Nope.
Says parking lot and playground in the future.
Okay.
And so that's why you want to make sure it's clear so you don't start
Yep,
picking away and somebody in the future board says, I want to use it for trees.
there we go. I'm good. I'm good, I just,
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Please like sign, motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Discussion and action on purchase of microphones for the board. Two things happened. Teresa got to sit in the audience, I got to sit in the audience, and we said, absolutely, we gotta have microphones. Then, we were looking up until tonight, we were only gonna need 4,000 or less. That owl is no longer supported, so it's gotta be replaced with a computer. So the quote that he came back with is $76.
That's how that sounds.
No, there's no sense.
No, that's 2 zeros. I'm reading your handwriting. It's 5476 even.
Yep, and the quote is here, she just brought, Vicki brought before she left tonight. This is the quote for replacing everything.
And that would just come out of our general fund.
Yep. But I think we really, yes, then you would use the screens too.
So, I mean, it would be recorded if...
Yes, yeah, and that's what's happening, so everything can be recorded, yeah,
Well, this records, it just doesn't have the video.
right.
Yeah, but it's, like you said, it's not gonna be supported.
Yeah.
Not sure what the time frame is on that, Tim didn't know.
So what are they using for speakers? The ceiling?
Well, those, Tim hooked those up.
Losing those, but I don't know if it's.
They used to use microphones. We had microphones when we.
Tim looked at it,
Will this work with that?
he gave me a quote to do that, and he knows they're up there. I don't know if he's gonna use those or not, Ken. He might not. He's the guy he's our IT guy.
Should we find out
Or
first?
find out?
No?
Because he knows what he's doing.
Oh, I kind of like to know how the sound is going to be.
Yeah, because those are new.
Read the
That's-
quote, see if you.
are you saying that
Oh, yeah,
because
I'm there.
because of the panels didn't help?
Oh.
It's not his fault, it's not his fault.
Excuse me, is your quote just a microphone, or will you have the ability to, like some places, they've got a camera where you can lay your plan on a deal and it'll show on the screen? Is that part of your quote too, or not?
I think it was, the quote was for microphones.
This quote?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also includes a
For
laptop.
For an amplifier or for a mixer?
He's asking.
No, I know, but I
he's
think
asking
you
about
can, but I think you'll be able to
$100.
put what, because Teresa uses this at St. Joe's. So and you can pull up the picture on your laptop to show up there. And the microphones are hooked to that. That's what she talked to Tim about today.
We don't really need pictures, I mean, everybody can see us.
No.
No, not us.
Somebody brings up a plan
Or-
Kind of like what the boosters just did, they supplied their own equipment for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all they did.
Yep, that was his laptop hooked to this. Yeah.
I thought that was the whole purpose of it, was just putting their,
It was.
would bring their own
I'm
laptops.
fine getting this, and I know we need it, but the speakers are.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to move forward with this, Ken, and if we find out we need more, we'll do more. You know what I mean?
The speakers will be the cheaper part. But
Yeah.
I'll second.
Well, do you want to make it a bigger dollar amount than that?
I wouldn't unless we know it's
No.
really amount.
If you
No,
think
because
it's,
we don't know what that dollar amount
okay,
is.
it's stick to the quote. Motion been made by Dan, second by Rachel. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries Future agenda items, do you have anything? Other than we're gonna have to set up a working session to talk about the zoning change.
We should be talking about board member compensation in 2026.
Well, and I don't have any problem with that. And as Vicki said, when you asked me about that before, the only time that can happen is you have to do it at a public town board meeting. Somebody from the audience has to request that we review the salaries and make a recommendation to the board members. And then what this board has always done is said, once you make that recommendation and you approve it, then we've said, there's 3 people up for election this time, and you cannot receive that upgrade payment until after you've been re-elected. You can't re-pay, and then what we've said is, so the other.
But that means re-elected at the next election, not proactive.
So
yeah.
what we've said is, we're not gonna give half of the board more pay than the other half. So you wait till all 4 of the board members in the chair have been all re-elected before it's implemented. So it wouldn't really be 26, it might be 27.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So,
But I think it's worth
but I
it.
think that's what I mean, we have to kind of plan.
We gotta do some research, look at what everybody else is gonna pay. I agree.
Well, but also we have to take, I mean, attendance should be part of that discussion. Attending meetings, I mean,
Could be. Okay. Anything else that you wanna look at? And move the adjourn, is there a second? Huh?
So.
I'd like to have Vicki on that discussion.
Next meeting.
So just so everybody knows, our next meeting is,
No, but I mean,
February.
that's something to get going on. I mean, so-
I'll second to adjourn.
well,
All in favor?
do we want a second working session sometime in January here? See if we can make it. You think we should wait? Okay. So we'll request, on the agenda for the February 4th meeting will be that we set a date for the working sessions for ordinance changes.
So then try to get somebody in the public to.
Yeah, look at salaries for board members.
All in favor, say aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
So I was just saying, everybody,